When she went to middle school, she kind of found this friend group that she matriculated to that accepted her, and we were thrilled initially. And we started to see some warning signs that maybe this wasn't a healthy place for her to be. Fast forward to the spring of 2020, our daughter, out of the blue, expressed to us that she was confused about her sex. And this was after 3 of her friends in her in-person friend group at school had also started identifying as transgender. And when a child makes this pronouncement, especially out of the blue, back in 2020, there wasn't a lot of information. So we were really struggling, especially since she had never expressed any kind of gender confusion leading up to this announcement. We were soliciting help from a mental health professional and really just trying to get to the root of her issue, because like so many other of these kids that fall into this ideology, she also had co-occurring mental health issues, anxiety, she's ADHD, she's also gifted, which kind of brings into this situation where her giftedness puts her intelligence really high, but with her ADHD keeps her emotional intelligence and maturity low. And so for some of these kids, until their brain matures, it almost reads like spectrum behavior, like children with autism. So this is not uncommon when you have co-occurring giftedness and ADHD. And with my background, I knew all of this. And so we embraced her quirkiness. We allowed her to dress how she wanted. She's very artistic, as many of these kids are. And when this happened, she immediately, like many of these kids, wanted a name change, change pronouns. At the time, she was identifying as non-binary. So we're still kind of trying to grasp what that even was, because in my clinical training, of course, I knew what transgender was. I knew what gender dysphoria was, which is a mental health diagnosis, but it was very rare. And you certainly weren't hearing about clusters of friends. Like, so for me, when she would come home and say these things, in my mind, I was thinking, statistically, this is impossible. The other thing that I saw as a precursor, and a lot of parents that I've spoken to see as well, is you've got 10 and 11-year-olds coming out as bisexual and pansexual when they've had zero experience in terms of dating, relationships, never even held someone's hand, much less been kissed. But yet they are identifying in these sexualities that they don't fully understand. And that really becomes a gateway into these identities. So we told our daughter, with the help of the therapist and the suggestion of the therapist, that we're not going to affirm this identity. This was happening very quickly. It was escalating very quickly, and we were concerned because her mental health was getting worse. And we told the school that we were not affirming at home, but we felt like we couldn't stop her from going by a nickname. And that's honestly what I thought it would be treated as. You know, John goes to school and wants to be called Johnny. And my daughter, several weeks later, got into the car after school and said, "Mom, I had a meeting today with school officials, and they asked me which restroom I wanted to use." And I was immediately taken back. I didn't know why they would be having a meeting, first of all, with my child without telling me, because my daughter, because of her ADHD, has a 504 plan on file. I have been present and involved at every 504 plan meeting, and I knew by law they could not even implement a 504 plan without my signature and being there because she's a minor.
And how did you respond to that?
I was irate. I was confused because I'm a very involved parent. I was volunteer of the year at this middle school. So I wasn't a stranger parent where they weren't really sure about the dynamic of our family or our relationship. I was up at this school running their copy room. I ran their red, white, and blue day. There was no reason for them to have not contacted me, notified me, and included me in this meeting. So they told me that my only recourse at this point was to go speak with the assistant superintendent at the district, which I immediately did. And you have to remember, this was fall of 2020. So this is at the height of COVID. A lot of schools didn't even reopen in other states. And so we were grateful on the one hand that our children were able to go back to school in person, but we were not allowed on campus. So all of this communication was done either via email or by phone. So just to give you an idea of how long this took, the violation occurred when school had started, but we did not get a meeting with the principal until the end of October. And we were shown the transgender, gender nonconforming support plan that they had completed with our 13-year-old daughter behind closed doors without our notification or consent. It was done with a school counselor, the assistant principal, and a social worker I had never met. So you have 3 adults in a room with a 13-year-old child, and then they put the burden of whether or not my parental rights would be respected and whether or not my husband and I would be invited to attend this meeting on our child. She was the sole determinator. And so in this support plan, it wasn't just changing names and pronouns. They asked her which restroom she preferred to use. They asked her which sex she preferred to room with on overnight field trips. And then they did something particularly egregious. They said, how should we refer to you when we speak to your parents? Should we use your birth name and pronouns? To effectively deceive us that the meeting had ever taken place. So parents in our situation, and ours is by far not an isolated case, that may have not even known their child was experiencing confusion, everybody at the school, staff, teachers, students, counselors, would know this child has assumed a different identity, maybe using opposite sex facilities, putting that child's safety at risk, and the safety of others. And the parents would be the only ones not in the know.